7:30, a good Sunday morning to you. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dennis House. Happy Easter and happy Passover. Well, today we are marking 100 days in office for Connecticut's new governor, Ned Lamont. It's a milestone where we look at what's been accomplished, what hasn't been accomplished, and what's baking in the oven. And with us today is Governor Ned Lamont. We thank you for being with us.
Hey, Dennis.
Hey, Governor, happy Easter to you.
Everybody.
And happy Easter to you. What's been the most unexpected thing that you did not plan for now that you're governor? When you look back at the last 100 days and, God, I didn't know that was going to happen.
I didn't know so many people were going to step up and say the state's at a crossroads, what can I do to help? From the commissioners to our economic development team and the business leaders coming forward, just to state employees and teachers. You know, it was just a shot of energy. A lot of people really want to take the lead in a state that needs a turnaround.
What's the most difficult part of this job?
I find the legislature a little complicating. We have great meetings behind closed doors. Then, people go to the TV camera. I always think we're reaching good common ground and everybody's there with my open door, big table policy. So I've got a little bit of work to do there, and we're getting it done because even that's a building filled with people who care about the state of Connecticut.
As you look back at the last 100 days, it's sort of an artificial number that we journalists have always come up with in terms of any politician who's in office. What are your biggest accomplishments?
I wanted to change the tone. We were a little down on ourselves as a state. Woe is us. GE is leaving. Connecticut can't get out of its own way. Last one out, turn out the lights, all that nonsense. And I wanted to make people believe in the state again. And I needed the business leaders to take the lead on this. I said, if you're not a champion for the state, nobody's going to believe in the state. And they have done that in a serious way. They did that starting to forgive student loans. The very first bill we passed was, for federal employees who weren't getting paid with the threat of a shutdown. And the bank stood for it and said, we'll provide a zero-interest loan. I think that's what we tried to do, is change the tone. I've tried to change the tone between labor and business. Both of them are arm in arm when they know how important it is to upgrade our transportation system. They're not always on the same page. They are 100% on the same page in terms of what we got to do now. And I'm trying to change the tone in the Capitol building. I'm still working on that. What's been your biggest disappointment, perhaps biggest mistake or failure in the last 100 days, in your own opinion? I think there are thousands of bills that come out of the LOB, and every single one of them that's a little out there, we get blamed for, we have to respond to, and I think that took me a little by surprise. I thought I had my bills. These are the governor's bills. These are the ones I'm putting my reputation behind. These are the ones I'm putting my shoulder to the wheel. All the other bills are out there. I think there's 700 or 800 that are now going to the floor. And so that can create a lot of noise out there in the political marketplace. What kind of changes, big changes, are still to come? I think... baking in the oven, so to speak. I'm going to be pretty busy the next 60 days, working hand in hand with the legislative leadership and the folks in the committees. I think it's the first honestly balanced budget the state has seen in a long time. Standard & Poor's, the rating agencies upgraded us from a neutral to a positive an outlook. People are still waiting to see what comes back from the legislature now. But you want to know what's baking: A, an honestly balanced budget, and B, an honest plan to get our transportation system back in the 21st century. Every business leader I talk to say that is indispensable if we're going to get the state moving again. I want to talk a little bit about tolls. We'll spend a few minutes on this. It certainly has been a tough sell for many people, and a lot of people are still wondering why you came to the decision to make a new decision on tolls, and that is that originally you had campaigned that there would be trucks-only tolls, and now, of course, you want them for all vehicles. How difficult was it to make that change in your mind, and what led to it? The fact that the lawsuit in Rhode Island is not going to be resolved for the foreseeable future. We don't know whether we can just do tolls on trucks. But the good news is the Republicans and Democrats agree on one thing, which is our transportation system is in crisis, and we have plans out there. We need additional revenues to fix that. I have come forward with electronic tolling, some of which is paid by the big trucking companies, some of which is paid by out-of-staters, some of which is paid by Connecticut citizens at a discount. And the Republicans have their own plan, which is to borrow more and put it on the state credit card, which I think is the exact same attitude that got us into the mess we are over the last 30 years. I'm not going to let it happen.
There are some who say, why didn't you dig your heels in and say, listen, I made this promise, I'm going to stick by it?
What, do the transportation system?
You know, in terms of the truck-only tolls.
Because we don't know whether you can do it right now. You know, this was a year and a half ago. We thought Rhode Island was totally just trucks. We knew the truckers were litigating this, and we thought it was going to be resolved. I put forward 2 plans before the legislature a few months ago, one for trucks only, one for trucks and cars. And I don't think it's going to be resolved whether the trucks only is going to work for the foreseeable future. And I don't want to sit around waiting for the courts to make up their mind. We know that we can do a tolling mechanism, electronic tolling, no barriers or anything like that. We know we can offer maximum discounts to Connecticut folks. And there are a lot of other things we can do to make it very easy. But I also know it's tough. Look, the middle class is getting slammed in this state. I know it. And I go around, you know, people say, Gov, it's the right thing to do, but I just can't do it. I can't do any more. And I take that to heart. That's the best argument against this. And I'm going to do everything I can to, mitigate the pain for folks. But it's the best investment we can. And I don't want to put it on the credit card for our kids to pay.
What do you say to the family from New Haven who has to commute, the gentleman who has to commute into Hartford every day, and it'll cost him X amount, $100 extra per year to make that commute? What do you tell him today?
I tell them it's the best investment this state can make. I can tell them that if we don't fix that commute, if we don't end the gridlock, if I don't speed up that rail system, if I don't bring down the cost of bus service, if I don't make public transportation, the state's going to have the same next 30 years like the last 30. Then we're about the only state in the country that hasn't added a new job in 30 years. We're falling behind. We'd have a surplus if we had just the same type of economic growth as our neighbors do. And a lot of that is related to fixing our transportation system and getting an honestly balanced budget.
Your former rival, Bob Stefanowski, was on this program, as you know, last month, saying that if he is elected in the year 2022, that he will tear down all these gantries. What did you make of that when he said that?
John Rowland said, if I'm elected, I'm going to eliminate the income tax. That's just politics.
Just the way it goes. Let's talk a little bit about some other issues that have not come up. Public financing for campaigns. You didn't use it, yet many people who ran for office last year did, including some state lawmakers who, as soon as they were elected, they were then appointed to your administration in various positions, and they resigned their positions. So all this tax money was spent on that. Do you think, and your rival didn't use the public financing either, do you think that that program should be eliminated or curtailed to save taxpayers money?
In the previous race for governor, Foley and Malloy, they each raised more money from independent groups than they got from the public financing. So let's face it, it's complicated. But what is important is for those state legislators to be able to compete. Allow them to have enough money that they can wage a real campaign on a relatively balanced playing field. On the governor's race, it's not working as well. Like I said, people really haven't used it much over the last couple of cycles. We got to think about that.
And sometimes we have like 4 or 5 lieutenant governor candidates, things like that. Should the program be, shrunk a little bit to save some money?
I don't think so. Elections? I mean, look at our political history. We were corrupt to cut. People, worry about the role of money in politics. So I think we should be very careful before we make changes.
I want to talk a little bit about legalizing marijuana because it's still a hot button issue, and a lot of people are, they're on the fence about it because they don't know the legal ramifications of people's criminal histories and things like that. Where do you stand on this right now, as it has evolved through the session?
I think the legislature has taken the lead on this. But there are a lot of false choices in politics. People say you're either pro-marijuana or you're anti-marijuana. Where do you stand? You can remember that it's really a question of whether you're going to have the black market doing this, lacing this stuff with fentanyl, creating a whole underground economy, which is dangerous, or whether we we regulate it carefully, we make it legal, and do it that way on a more safe basis. So it's not a question of outlawing is like prohibition, and it's just not working. Massachusetts legalizing it. Rhode Island probably legalizing it. Massachusetts has been legal for, 8 months now, right? Mm-hmm.
We are going to have more with Governor Lamont in just a moment.